let's talk about the things that you will need today. So firstly, I would say a cup of tea or coffee to keep you going, as always, and then a selection of squares, and I'll talk to you about the kind of squares that might be useful and how to select those in a moment. So some squares, and then some yarn, and then you will need a ruler or tape measure. You'll need your scissors and a needle for your yarn, so one with a nice big eye. Some pins or stitch markers. Now I don't know where my pins are, so I'm using stitch markers today. What else do we need? We need something to hang our organiser by. So the easiest and most simple thing to use is a clothes hanger. Now it's not all fitting on the screen, but a clothes hanger. One with this trouser bar. Okay, so you need this bar to hang your organiser over. So one of these would be nice and simple and ready to hang straight away. So you could use one of those, or you could use a piece of doweling, which is what I was going to use, but I can't find it. And the doweling is essentially, it's just like this wooden bar, this wooden rod, okay? Or you could use, I've got a wooden knitting needle here, nice chunky wooden knitting needle, that will work nicely. Even though this is crochet, it would still look quite good. Or if you have a long Tunisian crochet hook, one that you're not needing in a size you don't really use, you could use that. That would look really good, and that would be probably more ideal than a knitting needle. Or if you were making it, say, for in the kitchen, your hanger somewhere in the kitchen, then I sort of picked up this, a wooden spoon. That would be really, really quirky to hang on. You could just hang your organiser over this bit and then have the spoon just kind of making a feature there. That would be a nice quirky thing. Or some other utensil. So I'll grab this big long spatula and you could hang it over this handle, and then you just have it hanging on the wall. Nice quirky feature there with your organiser hanging down here. Would be quite cool. And if you are using something without a hanger, so this obviously has its own hanger here at the top, but any of the other things you'll need something to hang it by. And I will talk you through all these different ways later. So you might not want to select everything right at this moment. But if you need something to hang it by, you could maybe grab a scarf and we'll just attach it to the ends, and then you hang it sort of by the top here. Or we can crochet some chain or plait some yarn. Lots of different things we can do with that. And you will need some buttons. I've got my button box here. So you'll need some buttons, and then you'll need a crochet hook. Okay, so you'll need a hook, and that is it. So they're the things that you'll need today, but I will talk you through step by step as we go along, and you might want to select your things as we go along when you know exactly what you're going to do with them. So let's clear all this away and let's have a look at what squares to use. Okay, so selecting what squares to use really depends on what you're going to use your organiser for. Now, if you have seen the video on making the bag, you'll know that I said if you're going to use it for small items, you won't want to use a very open square. So this square, for example, this was the stone crop square. This has lots of big open holes in it, so you might not want to use that if you're going to use your organiser for small objects. So that's really the only thing to bear in mind, is if you're going to use it for small things, you might not want to use this, anything that's very, very open. Or if you don't want it to show what's in your pockets, then you'll want to use a more solid square, like this. There we go. No one's going to see what's in there. Nothing's going to fall through that one. Okay, so that's how to choose the sort of squares you might want to use or not use. And then the other thing is to decide what size and shape you want your organiser to be. Okay, so first thing, if you are having any of your pockets made bigger and you're using 2 or more squares to make a bigger pocket, then you want to go ahead and join those squares now. You want to join those first. So if you look at Unit 2 on our playlists, there are some methods there shown for whip stitch, mattress stitch, single crochet, slip stitch joins. There's a variety of methods there to use, and you just need to join your squares together to make your pockets however you choose, whether you're going to have them as wide pockets or tall pockets or big 4 square pockets. So go ahead and join your squares to make your bigger pockets if you need to. Okay, so I'm going to use these 3 food squares from Foodie Week, which I think was in July. I will try and remember to pop a link down below for these squares in case you're inspired to make them if you haven't already. They are over in the 2018 Granny Square Cal on that channel. Okay, but I'll try and pop a link there, and links to the Facebook group and the YouTube channels are all below as well, so do check those out if you need to. Okay, so I'm using these 3 foodie squares because they're going to be near my kitchen, so I'm going to lay them out, and I'm going to do this way so you can see. I'm going to have a tall one, but I'm going to lay it horizontally so you can see, and I'm going to have 3 like so. So what you want to do is lay them out how you kind of fancy them to be, leaving a gap obviously, and then what you want to do is lay them out in the style and the layout that you want to have, and then you want to measure around. So measure the length and the width, and you want to leave at least an inch on each side. So add an inch to each side. Okay, so these are, as I said, 6-inch squares, roughly 6-inch squares. So I'm going to add an inch to each side, which makes it 8 inches, and then leaving a gap between each one. So if I had 6, 12, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. So 22 by 8. So I need, my backing needs to be 22 inches by 8 inches. Okay, so measure your entire length and then measure the width and add an inch to each side. Okay, I hope that's clear enough. So if you were just doing it with these 2, then you just want to measure, and this is 6, so you'd add an inch and an inch, making it 8 inches, and then you've got 6, 12, and we'll lay this down here. Okay, so you've got 6 and 12, and then I want an inch above, in between and below. This is 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, so 8 by 15. So have a measure all the way around what you're making, adding an inch onto each side and the top and bottom. Okay, and make a note of how big you need it to be. Okay, when you have measured how big you need your backing to be, it's time to make the backing. Now, to make the backing, you could use some fabric. If you have some fabric around, you could use that. You could grab a pillowcase, that would work. You could use a pillowcase, cut that up. Any fabric you've got around, really, you could just cut that up. Just measure for the size you need, but obviously if you're using fabric, you'll need to add a little bit extra for hemming all the way around the edge. Okay, so you could use fabric if you wish, but we are focusing on crochet today, as that's what we are all about, crocheting. So I'm going to do a crochet background. Now, what you could do is the size that you measured you need your background to be, you could just go ahead and make a backing using your hook and yarn. You could make a backing of single crochet, which would be nice and stiff and dense and give you a really solid backing for this, but it will take you quite some time. But if you want to do that, I would suggest you get your yarn, you make some chains until it's the width that you need, or a little bit bigger than the width you need, and then use that chain and keep making your single crochet rows. If you're, single crochet would be great, but it just takes a while. Or you could use half double crochet, that would work too. And just make that backing. You could do double crochet, which works up a lot quicker, but it will be less stiff, but it will still work. Or you could do what I've done, and I've made some solid granny squares here. And I'm sorry, it's quite a dark colour, it's a dark sort of purple colour. So I've made some solid granny squares here. I've made these 8 inches, so that I've got an inch on either side for my 6 inches, okay? So I made these ahead of time. Here's the one I made earlier. And so I've got 3 of these 8-inch solid granny squares. This is what I'm going to use my backing. Now, it took me a while to make them, obviously, they're 8 inches, but it didn't seem as long as if I was doing single crochet rows. It would have seemed like it was taking forever, quite possibly. Whereas these, you're just working around, and it's quite nice to do. So it's entirely up to you how you want to make your backing, in rows or making granny squares, or however you choose to make your backing. So I've made these 8-inch solid closed granny squares. Okay, so let's have a look at how we're going to assemble these. To do a single crochet join on these, but single crochet leaves you with a ridge on the front, so I'm going to make it so that the ridge is on the back of the square. Okay, so I'm going to pop the right sides together and crochet through. If you wanted the ridge to show, then you would put the the right sides together and crochet. So I'm just going to do a single crochet join. Now I'm sorry that this is so dark and it's probably not quite so easy for you to see. I'm just going to go into this corner and join my yarn with a slip stitch. Okay, and then I'm going to go into the other corner and do a single crochet. And then all I'm going to do, I don't know if you can see this or not, all I'm going to do is go into each stitch on the front and the back. Now these are the same size, so they've got, every stitch will line up. I'm just going to go in each stitch front and back and do a single crochet. Now I'm using the same colour so that it's hidden, but I could use a coordinating colour which would give it a bit of extra interest if I fancied. So just go along and do a single crochet in each stitch, going through the front and the back. If you want to have a look at Unit 2, which shows various joining methods, you could sew this, you could use a different crochet technique, you could use a technique that makes a feature of your joining, which would look good too. The chain join would make a nice lovely feature of these being joined together, but I want this to be quite robust, so the single crochet join makes it nice and robust, and hopefully will make it last a nice long time. So that's what I'm doing for these, and then I will join the next one onto the top, and then I'll come back to you when I have finished. Okay, so I've joined my squares. You can see you can't really see the join very well because it's all in the same colour. So I've left the raised part on the back. You can see it's a little raised line there. That's on the back, and here's my 3 squares ready for my organiser. So the other thing you can do if you have used squares for your backing is you can go all the way along and round and do a border. So I'm probably going to do a border edge on this when I finish, and just make this nice and seamless. Okay, that's the only other thing to say on that really. So now it's time to get your squares and pin them on. So decide how you want your squares to be laid out. I'm still deciding on whether to do orange, pink, orange, or 2 orange and a pink. So decisions to be made. Pop them where you're going to have them, and then you want to pin them on. Now, as I said, I don't have any pins to hand, so I'm just going to use stitch markers. So just going to grab a marker and or a pin and just pin them on to roughly where you want them to be sewn. Okay, just so that they will be in approximately the right place. Remember to leave the top of your square open. You don't want to sew the top of it. So let's do the sides and the bottom. So just attach these on with your pins or stitch markers so that they won't move, like so. And you could do it along the bottom as well if you need to. Okay, and then you're going to sew them on to your backing, and you could do this in just a basic running stitch or back stitch, any type of sewing you like, whatever you feel more comfortable doing. So I think I'm just going to use a basic stitch, if I can find my yarn. So I'm going to use the same colour as the square, so that it will blend in. Just cut some of this. So what I'm going to do is just attach this yarn in the back over a couple of stitches, just secure it around. Oops, not like that. That's not how to secure it. So let's try that again. Just take it through and back through, just to secure on there. There we go. Okay, and then I'm going to come through and I'm just going to do a very basic stitch, nothing fancy at all. Just make sure I've got my square in exactly the right place. Bring my yarn through. There we go, and I'm just going to do a very, very basic kind of running stitch along here, back stitch actually. So you can use any stitch. You could use a whip stitch, which would give you an actual feature of the stitching, or you could do it as an invisible, sort of almost invisible. So back stitch, you're going to go back and then forwards. Okay, so then I'm going to go back to that stitch there and then forwards. Okay, so back, under and through. Nice and easy, and it means you've got a nice secure stitch for if you wash it, it's not going to fall apart. So makes it nice and secure. So I'm going to do this all the way down the side, the bottom and the next side, and then fasten off and secure that yarn through the back, just as I did when I started. There we go. You can see, you can't see these stitches very well. They're nicely hidden, just nice and neat along here, along each stitch. Okay, so do that for each pocket, and then I will join you back. Okay, so I've sewn all my squares on, so it won't all fit on the camera, but here we go. Just move that out for you to see. There we go, all my squares attached, making my organiser. Okay, so the next thing to do is to make the loops for hanging. So I've made one already on this side here. You see this one on this side. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to make one on this side with you. Now, depending on how narrow or wide your organiser is, depends on how many loops you will need. Now, for this one, I should only need 2 loops because it's not very wide. But if you're making a much bigger one, you'll probably need up to about 6 loops, depending on, as I said, how wide you're making it. Okay, so what you need to do is take your ruler or tape measure, and you want to measure 1 inch from the edge. So you can see I've measured 1 inch from the side there, and then on this one here I've measured 1 inch in from the side, and then I popped a stitch marker there. So that's where I'm going to start. So 1 inch in from the side, and then mark it, and then I did the same on this side. Okay, and then this is where we're going to start crocheting from. And this one I marked 1 inch in from the side, and then I started from the back so I could work along, being right-handed, so I just worked along this way. So this one I'm going to work on the front, and what you're going to do is take your yarn. Now you could use the same colour so it blends in, like this one here. Okay, or you could use a coordinating colour. One of the colours from your squares would look quite nice, but I'm just going to have it so it all blends in. Okay, so join your yarn in the place where your stitch marker is. Just remove that stitch marker. Okay, join your yarn in there, and I'm going to go straight in with a single crochet. Now, depending on how you prefer to join, you could do a slip stitch and then a single crochet, or a chain 1 and a single crochet, entirely up to you. So we're going to do 8 single crochets along. So I'm just going to work into the stitches that I've already got along here. Depending on how you've made your background, you might have to go into sort of edges or whatever. So I'm just going to go in and make 7 more single crochets, so 8 all together. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 and 8. Okay, so 8 single crochets along, and then chain 1, turn your work around and crochet back along 8 single crochets. Nice and simple. Okay, and then chain 1, turn your work and single crochet back across. So you're going to keep doing these rows of single crochet until it measures about 3 to 4 inches in length. Okay, so you want about 3 to 4 inches in length of this. Obviously, depending on what you're using to hang your organiser on, if you've got something very, very chunky, then you will need to make sure that it will fit over. So it's going to fold over like this, and you're going to pop your hanger in here. Okay, so you need to make sure that it will fit over whatever you're hanging it on. Okay, but for just like a closed hanger or a doweling or whatever, then 3 to 4 inches will be plenty. Okay, so keep doing these rows until you have about 3 to 4 inches, and then stop, and then I'll come back and show you how we're going to make our buttonhole and finish off. Okay, so when you have between 3 and 4 inches and you're happy with your length, you're going to chain 1 and turn, and then you're going to work the first 3 stitches. Okay, so the first 3. And then chain 2, skip 2 stitches, and then make the last 3 single crochets. So it's 3 single crochets, chain 2 and skip 2, and then the last 3 single crochets. And then you have a nice little buttonhole here. If you have a particularly large button, then you could just do 2 single crochets, chain 3 and skip 3 single crochets, and then do the last 2 stitches. Okay, and then chain 1, turn your work, and do those first 3 single crochets, or 2 if you've made a larger hole, and then do 2 single crochets in that chain space, and then your last 3 single crochets. And then last row, chain 1, turn your work, and make 1 more solid row across 8 single crochets. And that will be your tab with buttonhole all ready for hanging. Okay, do those 8 single crochets and then fasten off and weave in that end. Okay, so this is going to fold over like so to the front. Now I know you can't see this very well, I'm very sorry about the colour that I've chosen to use. So it's going to fold over like so. So you want to weave your ends in on the back. Okay, we're going to fold over like so and make our hanging loops. Let me pop this here so you can see it against the table. There we go, that's better. Okay, so they're going to be your hanging loops there. So what you want to do is measure 1 inch in from the other side and then make this loop on this side exactly the same way as you did this one. Make sure they are the same length. If you counted your rows, that would be useful. But just make sure that they are the same length or it's going to hang a little lopsided. Okay, so I'll leave you to make your other loop, and then if you are making a quite a wide organiser and need more loops in the centre, then especially if you've got quite a wide square one, all you need to do is measure the distance between your 2 loops. So you've got 1 on each end, measure, and then just make your other loops an equal distance apart in the middle. Okay, so I'm going to leave you to make those loops and sew in all your ends and make it nice and neat, and then we will just do the last couple of things to finish it off. Okay, there we go. I have my 2 loops completed. Just laying them this way on the table so you can see them a bit better. Okay, so the last thing to do is to sew on your buttons. So I've chosen a couple of round buttons here. They're nice because they have pattern on one side and they can be plain on the other, which is why I'm going to use the plain side. So I've got to say, you will need another needle that will go through your button. My big chunky one will not fit through the button, so make sure you've got a needle that will go through your buttons, and then you're simply going to attach them to the front of your organiser where the buttonhole meets. Okay, so just in the middle, and then that will fold down like so. Now I probably should have left a little bit of extra gap at the top of my organiser here, but never mind. So again, you just want to secure your yarn on the back first, just secure that through, and then you probably all know how to sew a button on. Probably don't really need to show you that, but I'm going to do it anyway. So sew the button through here and just make sure it's secure, but make sure you don't sew it. The thing you need to remember with buttons, which I used to get wrong, is sew it really tightly close to the work you're sewing onto, and then you can't get the fabric underneath, so just make sure you leave a little bit of a gap. If you need some help with that, pop your other needle underneath and that will give you your gap. Okay, so just sew that on, making sure that you don't sew it too tight to the work. Okay, just leaving a gap underneath. Okay, let's pop that in the middle. Okay, so I've just popped the needle back through so that I can make sure it's not tight, and then I'm just going to sew into this button. They can be a bit fiddly, especially underneath, but just take time and sew this button on. Okay, and then the other thing you can do is when you go back through, that's not quite central, but never mind. When you go back through is to only go through the top of the button, and then just to make it nice and secure, just wrap your yarn around a few times, and that makes that a bit extra secure around there, and then pop it through to the back and secure, and that is your button done. So just secure it on the back. Okay, and then just weave in your end to hide that end at the back, and there you go. So you want to do your 2 buttons, or however many buttons you need for your loops. Just attach those buttons all the way along, and the great thing about having buttons is it means you can undo and pop it in the wash if you ever need to. If you're using, say, a piece of doweling or something other than a clothes hanger, then you'd be able to slide that out anyway, but the buttons just make it that bit more versatile, and they make a nice feature as well. So just do your buttons like so, and then pop that over. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to do my second button, and then I'm going to come back and show you the finished thing. Okay, buttons sewn on. All that's left is to attach this to my hanger. So let me grab my hanger. Here we go. Find the nicest side. There we go. So just attach this onto the hanger if you're using a closed hanger, and there it goes. Now you could actually put 2 on here. I've just noticed there's room for 2, plenty of room for 2. So there we go. There is my organiser. I'm going to try and take a photo, and then I can pop that picture up at the end to show you the whole thing. So there's my organiser on the hanger, but I think I'm going to show you it by using the knitting needle. Okay, so I've got my knitting needle. I'm just going to pop that over in the same way. So you can see how I said if you're using something like this, you could fix it because you can just slide it in and out. Okay, so that's on there. So then you just need something to hang it. Now you could use some plaited yarn, you could make a chain, you could use anything you like to hang it by. If you've got a scarf, now this scarf that I've found doesn't really match with what we've got, but just to show you, if you wanted to choose something like this, you could just find the middle. Let's just tie it around. I'm not going to make it too long. Just tie it around at the ends, and on this side, just tie it. I want to do a better knot than me, and then you've got your hanger there, and this would look quite pretty hanging down. You've got your hanger there, would look quite pretty. Okay, so you could do that, or you could just like I said, plait some yarn, knot some, you could use like a friendship bracelet type technique if you know how to do that. And I'm going to have to decide how I'm going to hang mine. Okay, so just for the purposes of this video, I'm going to use the hanger, even though the closed hanger is a little bit too big for this organiser. I'm going to use it just for the purposes of this, so that I can take a photo, hang it up and take a photo, and then I may make a second organiser to hang on here, or I may use the knitting needle. Okay, so I'm going to hang this up, take a photo, and then show you the finished thing before I go. So all that's left to say from me now is I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you found it useful and helpful, and I can't wait to see what you've made with your squares. I can't wait to see your organisers, how you've done it, how you've changed it up, and show me those photos in our Facebook group Beyond the Cow. The link to the Facebook group is in that description below. If you found this useful and helpful, you've enjoyed crocheting along or just watching along with me, then please click that like button and give us a thumbs up. It's much appreciated. And until next time, just keep hooking and don't let your tea get cold.